Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to be at SWIS because many other of the presenters have said this, but I'm going to say it again. There are few times in our lives in this industry that we could be sitting in a room like this right now with the level of coach, the level of trainer, the level of rehab pro, physician, and also expert all in one single room. So Ken has done an unbelievable job yet again this year, and I really appreciate what he's put together here with the special event that this is this weekend. 2 years ago, I sat on a stage at SWIS, and I talked about something called the 6-phase dynamic warm-up sequence. That was actually the first presentation that I ever gave about the 6-phase dynamic warm-up sequence. If you guys aren't familiar with what that is, it is a 6-phase sequence of getting through a warm-up, a complete preparation for training or performance, anywhere from 6 to 8 minutes long. It's efficient, it's effective. One thing that it's not sexy. The first article that I ever handed into T Nation in 2013, it was about foam rolling. It was about doing some soft tissue on yourself. It was called Hands-on SMR Techniques. And my editor at the time, before he was even my editor, T.C. Luoma, he told me in one line, he said, "John, nobody gives a shit about this fluffy physical therapy bullshit," quote unquote. And I remember reading that line like, oh, holy shit. People don't care about what I have to say? No. I emailed back and I said, hey, what do I do to make this where people are going to resonate with it? How do I make this actionable for people so they actually use the systems that I know will help them? You got to make it sexy. You got to make the most unsexy thing in the world sexy. And the way that I tried to do that over the last 5 years in this industry is trying to get people to where they want to be. Try to get them the results that they're after. Bigger, faster, stronger, and on top of everything else, more resilient against pain and injuries. So in the last 2 years since I first presented that 6-phase dynamic warm-up sequence, we've had over 3,000 coaches be certified in the 6-phase dynamic warm-up sequence with my pain-free performance training system. We have professional sports teams in the NFL, in Major League Baseball, and professional lacrosse currently this year using the 6-phase dynamic warm-up sequence. But that all started here at SWIS. SWIS is a special place because we all save up our best material for this conference. It's my 29th conference of the year, and I saved up this performance recovery system for here and now for a reason. Over the last year, I've been perfecting this system, and it's, again, something that's not going to be sexy. It's not going to impress you guys because you guys are already doing many of these things. The power is in the systemization. The power is in the repeatability. The power is in the result. The performance recovery system I look at as a culmination of my 12 years in the industry, all into one system centered around all of my career experiences, my life experiences, my sport experiences. All the people have helped me along the way. All of my mentors have played a role into this system. But it's something that Dave Tate got quoted in saying, if you guys watch that series on Elite FTS, he's down on the foam roller sweating bullets, like, why the fuck am I doing this stuff? I'm sitting there trying to get him to do some T-spine mobilization work, but at the end of the session, we go through this exact performance recovery system. Dave stands up, swamp ass, sweat coming down his face. John, this is the most effective form of recovery that I have ever used. And I think the famous quote from that series was, this is more effective than any supplement. This is more effective than any supplement. This is more effective than any training modality that I've ever used. I knew this shit was good. I wouldn't be up here teaching it. I wouldn't be using it with my athletes. I wouldn't be going into professional sports teams and teaching these systems if I didn't think they were world class. But come from somebody like Dave. Come from somebody like Dave that has literally seen everything, that has used everything, that has access to anyone in the world who he wants to gain personal information from. For him to say that meant more to me than anything else. I was in Columbus, Ohio when he said that, working with him. And on the flight home, I went into one of these zones. as a writer, anyone who produces content, you get into these zones sometimes. And I wrote a 14,000-word article, and it came out as the performance recovery system because it had never been published before. So it was a system that I was running with my athletes, but it never saw the light of day. If you look at performance and recovery, this is going to be the top resource that we see on Google. It's going to be the top resource anywhere because more people have used this in the last 8 months since we published that article than almost any other system that I've ever produced. I know you guys are a little bit disappointed that you only get one bald meathead for this session instead of two, but a lot of the things that we go through today, I'm going to use Dave as an anecdote. I'm going to use him as the case study of how many of these things work because, I know myself included, many of us are disappointed that Dave couldn't be here for the Fixing Dave Tate session, which was going to be epic. But I promise you guys that you'll be able to take a ton out of this, and you'll be able to implement this system literally tonight. There's few and far between things in the fitness industry, in the sports performance industry, that you can implement instantly. Everybody talks about instant implementation, but sometimes things are too complex to be instantly implemented. Sitting through some of these amazing sessions this weekend, just blown away. Like, holy shit, what did I just hear? And then it takes you about 3 to 4 days to unravel it in your mind to see how this may fit into your systems. What I love most about the performance recovery system is it allows you to be an expert upon experts. It allows you to use your specific expertise. It allows you to use your credential and your license and your ability to either touch people or diagnose people or not effectively for your clientele, no matter if they're professional athletes or they're mothers of 4 that are looking to lose 20 pounds. The power is in the system. But when we think about recovery is a hot topic the last year or two in the industry. Before that, nobody was worried about recovery. We've gone through a decade of all about high-intensity training. Everything is about literally kicking your ass as hard as you possibly can so you're about to throw up and then doing that 6 days a week. We have this mentality, especially in America, not so much in Canada, I hope, but in America, it's this polarizing opposite ends of the industry. Either people are unhealthy and fat and obese as fuck on one side, or we have the people that are like, I'm never going to be that. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to train every day. I'm going to eat perfectly, and I'm going to go absolutely crazy using fitness as a medium to display some things that really represent us as human beings. So this turns into the CrossFit mentality, the HIIT mentality, the more is better mentality. I can tell you definitively, working with some of the most banged up people on the face of the earth, that more is not better in training. More is not better. Better is better. Efficiency is better. Results are better. More is not better. But when we think about recovery, we can't just be talking about training. Yes, I sit here today as a training expert talking to you guys, but there are a lot of different intertwining areas, cofactors that enhance or deter away from recoverability. The SWIS is an amazing place because we look at this recovery triad of nutrition, lifestyle, and training. If you guys use these sessions intelligently this weekend, you should have got all of this stuff. The best experts in nutrition, the best lifestyle managers, and of course on the training stream right here in this room, you heard from the best strength and conditioning coaches in the world. But Foundations of Recoverability, we have to have an appreciation for more than just what's happening for the 2 to 3 to 4 hours that we're in the gym with our athletes. Life happens outside of the gym. Life happens outside of training. A lot of goals need to happen in the kitchen along with the squat rack. As strength and conditioning professionals, as rehab professionals, we have to have a better appreciation for those allied practitioners in our circles. The nutritionists, the dietitians, the physicians, the rehab pros, lifestyle management. Every single session we do needs to be a session above and beyond the X's and O's, the sweat on somebody's face, the 1 RM on somebody's back. It's an education process. If you're not educating your client each and every session and giving them tools that they can use for the rest of their life, you are doing them a disservice. Our goal needs to be to pack our clients with as much actionable information as we can possibly do per session. When we think about contact time of strength and conditioning coaches and personal trainers, no one has more face-to-face contact time with an end client than we do. That means that we are in charge of having the biggest change in lifestyle habits, the biggest market improvements on nutritional practices that don't necessarily all happen in one session. It doesn't all happen in one consultation. It happens over longevity, a period of time, so we can, again, go little by little and make changes in the way that people live, not only the way that people train. There's this idea in the industry that we train our ass off, we get to the point where we're puking the bucket, and you know what? We're going to rest on the couch for 1 or 2 days. We're going to chill. We're going to Netflix. We're going to eat bonbons. We're going to get that glycogen up. And recovery is just going to happen. Recovery is going to happen. It's just a matter of time. Recovery is not a passive process. Recovery is not a passive process. At the highest levels and at the lowest levels of fitness and high performance, recovery needs to be an active process. We need to have strategies and active modalities which help us train harder, train longer, get the results that we're after. Because again, more is not better in terms of training. Results are what we're after. This pyramid represents really what matters in terms of recoverability before we get into this 5-stage performance recovery system. All the passive modalities in the world don't do shit until you have a foundation of your pyramid. For lifestyle factors for me are centered around sleep, centered around stress, and also centered around our daily positions. Those 3 you cannot fake. If you spend your days 12 hours a day like this in an office, we're going to have to be able to mitigate those positions somehow in some way. If you're fighting with your wife every night and your stress level is up here, that is not going to be good. Our body doesn't know the difference between stress sources systemically. Stress, daily life stress, is a huge, huge pigeonholing factor in terms of recoverability and high performance. And the last one, the most unsexy thing in the world, sleep. Sleep duration, sleep quality. If we're not talking about these things, we are never going to truly achieve at the highest level that our clients and our athletes are capable of achieving. These things are non-negotiable when we talk about education with our clients and our athletes. One step up from there, nutrition. We got to get that on point. Not everybody has to be a nutritional specialist in this room, but we have to have a network that allows us to get our athletes and our clients the right information that synergize with lifestyle, that synergize with training, and that allow us to get to the apex of that performance. When we think about training, the best recovery-based training modality in the world is smart training. Intelligent training, dialing in every single aspect of your client and athlete management, from the second they walk through the door to the second they walk out that door, not leaving any stone unturned. Mindful training, what Brian Carroll is calling it. Mindful training, focused in, high quality, that is the next step up on recovery. But you know what? Nobody appreciates this stuff. Do you know why? We have the shiny object syndrome. Our industry loves shiny objects. Our society loves shiny objects. Passive modalities for me. supplements, passive therapies, things that cost money. If you have to pay for it, that is a passive modality. There's nothing wrong with passive modalities, but it makes up 5 to 7% of the overall recoverability of an individual. We've heard this all before. How many personal trainers we have in the room? Okay, a lot of you guys. Personal training is a business, right? We want people to come and utilize our business. But how many times have we heard, oh, I just can't afford the 4 times a week. I need to go down to 2 times a week with you because I can't afford it. When in actuality, it's about a $200 to $300 difference on a monthly basis. You know what? That same individual that can't afford that is looking at $150 in supplements a month. Oh, I have my non-negotiable 2 times a month that I'm getting a massage. Oh, I go into my chiropractor 6 times a month. None of that stuff's bad. It's where they're investing their emphasis, where they're investing their money. Not what they're spending it on, but what they're mentally investing in. We need to be having more investment lower on that pyramid, and we need to be bridging the gap between this passive and training modalities with active-based modalities that we teach our clients. Active modalities are something that we learn. We are mindful. We are interactive with our own movements. We are interactive with our own self-care, our own maintenance. We have 100% control of our bodies doing active-based modalities. And you know what? That shit is free. These are the things that we need to be thinking about before we put somebody on a supplementation schedule that's a couple $100s a month. Before we go in and start doing some of the passive modalities that literally are costing people thousands of dollars per month. Because you know what? Smart training, sound nutrition, locked-in lifestyle management systems, all of those things are going to far help that person better in terms of recoverability and high performance at the end of the day, at the end of the month, at the end of the year, at the end of the decade, at the end of their life. When we implement active modalities and when we teach in the coaching process, that person should have those skills for the rest of their lives. Now that's over-delivering in my mind. In terms of optimizing the central nervous system, there's a lot of deep, deep science on this. CNS recoverability. But it really is simple when we break it down. We have 2 polarizing ends of the central nervous system spectrum. We have the parasympathetic, which is our rest and recover side, and then we have the opposite side, which is our sympathetic, fight or flight. You know, we can monitor these by different vital metrics, heart rate, respiratory rate, 2 of the easiest. If you're in more of a clinical setting, blood pressure. We can get really detailed, look into pupil dilation. We can look into blood testing. But heart rate is the one that I see easiest to transfer into people's practices. The easiest thing that we can monitor during training sessions, during recovery sessions. And there's some pretty good science on how heart rate is really a key indicator of all these other deeper vital metrics. So keeping this simple is really key without overloading somebody and where they want to be in terms of recovery. The central nervous system is so intriguing because everything goes through that. That is the key player in each and every action that we do as a human being. Training's no different. Recovery's no different. But as strength and conditioning professionals, we live on the spectrum at all times. With our clients, with our athletes, they are always going to be somewhere on the spectrum. The key is trying to find the optimal position on the spectrum for the most advantageous times. It sounds so simple, but anyone who's coached an athlete, coached a client before, we know how hard this can be. The stimulation of the central nervous system happens quickly. It happens for different reasons. We need to be appreciating both ends of the spectrum so we can optimize around when we want what end to shine through. If we go in and we're trying to put a 1 RM on our back in the parasympathetic state, you're going to shit the bed. You're going to suck. You're going to have a terrible performance, and you might even get hurt. On the opposite side of things, 10:30 rolls around, kids are in bed, you're laying down, you have a heart rate of 168, you're sympathetically driven, you're not going to sleep well that night, you're not going to recover, you're never going to get back into that recoverability mode based off of this. We need to be optimizing around the central nervous system with stimulation techniques, but also having an appreciation for what happens after training, what happens on off days from training. Everything other than those 2 to 3 hours a week that we're spending with sweat on our face and heavy weight on our backs. The performance recovery system. I explain it as expediting mechanical, neurological, and systemic recovery. Now, it's a triple-headed monster of recovery right there. Neurological, yes, that's super, super important. But mechanical recovery is equally as important. And systemic recovery, these are all interplaying factors. I'm going to go through each and every one of these stages, and I'm going to have demonstrations of each one just to show how I coach them, the big ticket items, so you guys can scale it into your own practices. First step is global SMR techniques. Second step is Bi-Phasic stretching. Catch-all flow-based mobility is third. We'll talk a little bit about neural recharge training. I know Christian and May did an amazing job at that yesterday. I sat in on that session. A lot of what we're going to talk about today was influenced by that. And then how low-intensity energy systems development and positional parasympathetic breathing come into play on optimizing that CNS spectrum. It always makes me laugh. You know, I'm sitting here at the SWIS symposium, and I have to put a fucking slide up of a foam roller. It's like, what is this, 2003? It blows my mind, but I still give these slides. I still talk about foam rolling, even after all of these influences have come through our industry, all the information has come through our industry. People still aren't doing it mindfully. Not all foam rolling, not all soft tissue work has been created equally. Foam roller, it's a tool. Same as a barbell. Same as the SS yoke bar sitting on the ground there. It's a tool. Just because I have that yoke bar on my back does not mean I have to box squat it to a 20-inch box like Dave. It means that I could do anything with it. It's a tool. I could reverse lunge with that thing. I could push press that thing. I could squat that thing. I could do JM presses with that thing. I could do whatever I want with that tool. But the key is you have a goal in mind. You have a reason why behind what you're doing with that tool. But people don't treat the foam roller like that. They're like, man, I got to the gym 20 minutes early. I'm going to roll my ass a little bit. I'm going to get on my hip flexor. That feels good. Oh, man, my upper back. If you're really intense, you'll get somebody to step on you and do some Chinese stuff. Not all soft tissue is created equally. We need to treat this tool like we treat every other tool. For performance recovery in mind, not performance training, but performance recovery in mind, we cannot be using the same soft tissue techniques as we use in the pre-training state. Different goals, same tool. Different actions, same tool. If you don't know why you're doing something, you probably shouldn't be doing it at all. Global SMR techniques really are mechanical in nature. When we think about a global technique as opposed to a more acute trigger point technique, the global SMR technique allows more movement relative over your body on the foam roller. So we have 6 to 12 inches of relative movement that happens. The purpose for these longer passes on the foam roller or whatever other soft tissue tool you're using is because we want to not only stimulate the parasympathetic response in the tissues, using the tissues as a medium back up to here, but we also want to have some mechanically driven processes happening. Things like lymphatic drainage, coming back up into central circulation for excretion. Things like active muscle pump stimulation, being able to contract our muscles meaningfully around vein, artery, nerve complexes, again, pushing up unwanted inflammation into systemic centers so we can excrete it. But yes, we also get the benefits of parasympathetic responses. This is different than what we'd be doing in a pre-training state. For anyone who's familiar with the 6-phase warm-up, we're spending anywhere from 45 seconds to 1 minute and 30 seconds on the foam roller pre-training. That's it. That's all I'm willing to invest. Somebody comes in with a fucking gunshot wound, they're in 10 out of 10 pain, I'm only willing to invest about 90 seconds in their foam rolling. But this is different. We're going to prolong this because performance training is not the goal. Expediting recovery here, and locally is the goal. We want to spend 2 to 3 minutes on each structure here. This is the time to have an emotional relationship with your foam rolling. This is the time to get down and start humping the floor on the side of the gym while nobody's watching, hopefully. This is the time to place emphasis on your breathing patterns, on your woo-saw moments, chilling the fuck out. This is the time. It is not the time before training to do this kind of stuff. We need to light it up and get to training as our goal. Again, recovery is the goal here. We have this misconception about pain in soft tissue that I see time and time again. It's like more pain is going to be better in terms of the therapeutic response, in terms of the recoverability response. And it couldn't be further from the truth. The most sympathetically driven response in the human body is what? Pain? Pain's pretty sympathetic. Anyone who's ever had a nasty injury, an acute injury, been in a car crash, that shit is sympathetic. You get driven in terms of your neurological abilities in those time periods. What we want to do is keep pain to a very, very minimal level. Second most subjective thing in the human body is reporting a pain response. Subjective reporting is kind of shit. But the average person is going to go for anywhere from about a 3 to a 4 out of the 10 on the subjective pain scale and still do okay, kind of sitting back on that parasympathetic side of things. That's where I want people. Where I don't want people, with a 100-pound kettlebell in your stomach, on your spleen, trying to tap out against the ground. That's not where I want you. I also don't want you with a barbell in your tricep about to take that tendon off the bone at 9.5 out of 10 pain scale. That is sympathetic driven. There are times and places for all of these things, but in terms of recovery, in terms of trying to use soft tissue as our means for expediting neurological, mechanical, and localized recovery, this is the most effective thing that I've used. We need to be placing emphasis on distal to proximal work, meaning that if we're going to be foam rolling the thigh, we want to be going from here to here, actively contracting that so we can get, again, circulation going back into the regions that we're looking to get. And remember, we're not necessarily doing global SMR techniques for a ton of localized recovery. We're doing it for the brain. We're doing it for systemic recovery. Meaning that we want to place our emphasis on the broadest, densest musculature in the body. Things like glutes, like hamstrings, adductors, quads, lats, pecs. Notice I didn't say the infraspinatus. I didn't say the supinator. Large muscles. The reason being is they have the most physical contact with the van complex. The venous system's a powerful thing. We just need to facilitate that venous system to work for us instead of against us. And there's some intriguing research on foam rolling the last couple of years. There's actually a couple studies that blew my mind, saying that literally foam rolling, breathing like a dog, having those shallow breaths, having a high heart rate, doing soft tissue work of any means actually has no carryover functionally, period. It's like you just took that 15 minutes that you invested in foam rolling and threw it in the toilet. The one differentiating factor was if we can do soft tissue work or mobility work or even stretching for that matter, and we have a deep diaphragmatic-based breathing strategy, we can actually get the gains that we're after. So breathing's the one thing that unlocks the potentiation for everything else in terms of recoverability. Bi-phasic stretching is an interesting one. It's a good story. So about a year and a half into writing for T-Nation, I got a new editor. TC and his fluffy rehab bullshit was no longer my editor. I had Chris Schugert. Chris Schugert, awesome, awesome writer. And I send in this great article, I think. I'm like, man, I've been using this technique for multiple years with my athletes. It's really been a game changer for people's stability and mobility, both simultaneously. And I tried to explain to him what it was. Dynamic oscillatory stretching mixed with a little static positional stretching with the full contraction and brace. Oh, so there's like two different phases, saying to me, I guess. And at the time, it was like triphasic training was like the big word in the industry. It's like triphasic training, Cal Dietz, triphasic. He's like, biphasic stretching. The way it works at T-Nation is they just publish shit with titles on it that you've never seen. So like everybody else, you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh shit, I'm live on T-Nation. You click and you're like, oh, that article title is amazing right now. Like, didn't write it, but whoa. And then you look into your first paragraph too and you're like, man, that's even worse, but different story. Biphasic stretching was something that Chris put a name to. And it's something that I keep because, you know what? Content editors are so much better at simplifying things than people that have been in the academic institutions for too long, people that have been in the training ground for too long, been around other smart people like the people in this room. But biphasic stretching is as simple as doing a little bit of micro movement, dynamic oscillatory stretches out of sound positions, brace positions, centrated positions at the hips and the shoulders with full control. And then adding a little bit of an end range, terminal, static positional stretch on top of it. It is as simple as that. 2 phases, and honestly, I've seen twice the result from this as opposed to only dynamic stretching or only static stretching. The combination of this really synergizes these two things together to get the most out of it. So we extend these out. There's a big difference between trying to stretch your quad like this, which we see all the time, and trying to place a stretch-based stimulus through this same quadricep in this way. I got that same stimulus through rectus, through the VL, through the entire quadriceps group there. I got the same stimulus. The inputs were far different. This is passive bullshit that is eventually going to lead to some chronic-based stresses in places that we don't want it. This is the biggest mistake I see with stretching, compensatory stretching, AKA, in order to have you get that stretch-based stimulus on the targeted tissue, whatever it is, you have to contort yourself in shit positions, unstabilized positions, passive positions, in order just to get a little bit of self-justification of, man, I'm doing good, I'm stretching here. My wife told me I need to stretch. My back's always hurting. Well, my hamstrings are tight. You've heard that before, right? Why does your back hurt? Oh, your hamstrings are tight. You got to stretch them every night. For the people I see, the rehab purgatory of stretching and foam rolling has led to more problems than if they were never to do anything at all. Now, that is unintelligent training if I've ever seen it. So what we're trying to do here is double up on what we just targeted with our global SMR techniques. So again, we're trying to not only get a localized response of the stretch-based stimulus in the tissues, but we also want to get a response here and here. So we're going for the biggest, broadest attaching muscles in the body again. Pecs, lats, glutes, hamstrings, quads, adductors. Those are the big players. We want to key in on those big players. But what we don't want to do is be hanging out passively without a sound positional brace through the entire body, head to toe control. I thought it was funny yesterday. I was sitting in Brian's session, and I'm squeezing my partner's hand, and everyone's laughing. But you know what? That's the kind of intensity that you have to have no matter what you do. Whether you're unracking a 1RM on your back, or whether you're going into this technique. Positional mastery is what we're after. People get a misconception with this. It's like, oh, it's stretching. Anyone who's used this technique knows that it's more than just stretching. It's getting a stretch-based stimulus secondary to positional mastery, internal tension-based positional mastery. We need to be posturally aware with every single thing that we do. And it needs to be said that the body doesn't necessarily respond very well to passive-based modalities, passive-based strategies. There's really nothing passive in the world unless you're to knock somebody out and start stretching their hamstrings. There's always going to be some active component, but the more of this that we can get involved with the rest of this, that is how we get transferability of a skill, a motor skill. If you're not teaching, then you might as well not train your clients. If you're giving them sets and reps and you're counting fucking reps, then don't train. Find another profession. We need to be teachers. We need to change our physical society. We do that through education and teaching. So be posturally aware. Teach your clients to be posturally aware. Have them have a relationship with their body. That's what we're there for, facilitating learning, period. When we break this down, the body thrives with micro movements. The reason the body thrives with micro movements is not only neurological, but it's mechanical. We get more stimulation of the joint space. We get more stimulation of intrinsic stabilizers, especially around the ball and socket-based joints of the shoulders and the hips. We get more input and data points into the system with moving. If I stand here like this, not moving at all, very minimal data points coming into the system. If I'm doing the same rock back and forth, I'm getting a lot of positional change, awareness happening with data points going like this. Our goal as coaches and trainers and rehab pros, get as many data points as possible so we can systemize them in a way that we can use to our advantage. Micro movements in everything that you do is so important. Then the static end range stretch. This doesn't mean that we're using compensatory strategies here. It means that we're achieving an authentic end range with everything else in a neutral position. Tension and torque and proximal stability of the pillar, man, this is an unbelievable tool if you can teach it. Teaching courses last year with Coach Tibbs. First course, I started talking about the pillar, and we break. Chris comes over to me. John, you know I invented the term the pillar in 2003. I'm like, you're a bullshitter, man. No, you didn't. And then he pulls up the T-Nation article. See? I'm like, you invented everything. But I guess Coach Tibbs, he invented that pillar. But the pillar is one of the most important things that we can learn how to control. Shoulders, core, hips, integrated together, oblique slings. No matter what you're doing, pillar control, number one skill that we need to try to be transferring. Catch-all flow-based mobility sequences are what happens next. So after we get through, we're investing 1 to 3 minutes in on foam rolling or soft tissue work on the big, broad attaching muscles in the body. 1 to 3 minutes per structure on Bi-Phasic stretching with positional and postural awareness. Now we're time to do some shit that's actually going to be fun. We're actually going to move. We're actually going to be more mindful. If you guys think I sit up here and I love foam rolling and I love stretching, I hate that shit. If I never had to stretch or teach a foam rolling drill for the rest of my life, and I could use training as 100% of our maintenance for staying strong and resilience against pain and incidents of injury, I'd do it. I'm not dogmatic to any tool. Somebody told me at SWIS this year, John, you could squat 600 pounds in 6 months if you did yoga 4 days a week and only yoga. I'd friggin' do it. I'd do it. I care about the results. But again, there's nothing too sexy about some of the more passive stuff. When we get into some more active strategies, that's where I really see we have the biggest bang for our buck in terms of recoverability, but also, again, enhancing motor learning and getting new motor skill acquisition into our systems. Anyone who has an Instagram knows, like, flow is like the shit now. Everyone's doing flows. There's guys you've never heard of with 4 million followers on Instagram that's like flowing out in the airports. Then he's flowing out at home. He's cooking his breakfast. He's flowing out. It's the new thing, man. Flow is been around forever. Flow, it's not like it came out like 18 months ago on IG with some guy's account. Flow is essentially something that has been transitioned from old Eastern practices of movement. I used to coach in China. This is many, many years ago. One of the best jobs I ever had in terms of coaching Olympic athletes, coaching their weightlifting team, coaching their ping pong team. Yeah, that's a sport. And coaching sports there that I didn't know existed before I got my ass to Beijing. It's like, hey, John, you're in charge of a trampoline team. You got a program for their youth development and their Olympic development. What's trampoline? Challenging job, but the one thing that I took away from my time in China was, man, these people move so much better than we do. They do. Eastern practice of movement, of daily movement, far trumps our shit. What do? We drive, get to the office, we sit, drive home, we Netflix and chill. We don't have a daily practice. We don't have a daily movement sequence that we go through that we depend on for our health and resiliency. They do. It came full circle with me. I was running the FMS at the time, so we FMS all 1,600 athletes in Olympic Village. So it was like one day, and we had to do all these. We had like a team of 20. I was FMSing people for 8 straight hours. 3, 2. By the end of that day, I was like, holy shit, I need to go to the bar. That was all there was to do there. So there's like 2 other dudes that spoke English. So we went and we were drinking Chinese beer. And on the way to go to the Chinese bar, we go by this park. It's like 9 o'clock at night at that point. And there's like 20 people out in the park. And they're flowing, they're going through movements. And we're like, man, we just don't see this shit in America. We just don't. We don't see people with the physical practice like that. These weren't high-performance athletes out there. They were average people. But you know what? They had a daily movement practice that served them far better than it's serving us right now. So with the Americanization of our fitness industry, we take something from another country, and then we teach it back to that country. Have you ever noticed that? It's like, hey, I learned all these Russian and Chinese methods. I mastered them myself now. I'm going to go back to Russia and China and teach them their own methods now. It's actually more popular than you'd think. It's more common than you'd think in our industry. It always blows my mind. But systemization is the key. Usability is the key. The method is only as good as the action you can take upon it. But getting back to this, flow's the latest thing. Basically, flow has the goal of placing multiple joints of the body through a full range of motion in reciprocating fashion as possible. Seems simple enough. Shoulders go through a full range of motion. Spine goes through a full range of motion. The hips, the knees, the ankles, everything. That's the goal there, but you do it in such a way that you look like you're in like the Matrix or something. It's like super, super flow, super smooth, sequenced, authentic, the kind of shit that just looks beautiful. I don't get off on the flow, just to be said. I've done multiple certifications in flow. I'm an animal flow instructor. I've done all that stuff, and it's amazing, amazing systems. I'm just a meathead. I just like lifting shit. I'll say it. I'm a meathead. My name's John. So for me, I want to make it as simple as possible. For what we do with our athletes, we try to transition in a move or 2 of flow, but it more turns into, hey, we're going to put this 1 to 3 corrective exercise or mobility drills that we actually see a marked difference with, an objective result-based difference with, and we're going to place them together in such a way that we can elicit a flow-based response with more of an objective practice with corrective exercise or mobility drills. Something that's been taught for 30 years, the world's greatest stretch. That shit is legit the world's greatest stretch. Why? Before flow was ever popular, it achieved many of these goals of flow, putting multiple regions of the body through a full range of motion and reciprocating walking fashion. It achieves the goal there. The goal, again, move as many joints as possible through a full range of motion and reciprocating constant movement fashion. Constant movement is the key here. If we stop in static positions, again, remember the body thrives with micro movements. The body truly thrives with the ability to move through space. We need to respect this fact. But we need to differentiate between flow for recovery and flow for literally putting my heart rate at 209 and making me want to die 5 minutes into a sequence. Has anyone ever been to like a hot yoga class that's more of like a flow-based class? Brian, raise your hand. No. No. So that's ball-busting work, right? Like that's not recovery. That's like, I think I'm going to pass out. No, I'm good. Okay, I think I'm going to pass out again. No, I think I'm good again. That is not recovery. One of the biggest enemies of recoverability here and here is heart rate. This is the biggest limiting factor I see to some of the most popular flow out there today in our industry. It's not that this shit's not good, but I know very few and far between high-performance athletes that I work with that cannot keep their heart rate in a recoverability zone, in a recovery or a zone 1. That means that they're in zone 2, they're in zone 3, they're in zone 4, they're in overload. They're about to have a hernia doing recovery. That is not what we want here. It is really, really hard to keep, again, constant tension, constant control of your body maximally and keep that heart rate down. As soon as we spike the heart rate, you might as well just quit because your goal of trying to optimize recovery, you just fucked it up. You simply did. With one heavy spike of the heart rate, that turns into training. And again, more is not better. Better, more systemization is better. We need to be minimizing the high spikes in vital metrics. Again, unless you guys are like the BFR pros and you guys have Dopplers on you and you're doing like blood pressure while you're training. Funny side note, I was actually talking to a couple athletes about like, have you ever seen somebody squat with the blood pressure cuff on before? And they're like, no, bro, I've never seen it. Maybe that should be a new study. Scotty, do you want to do that study? You're in? Has anyone ever seen that before? Okay, 0. Awesome. Might be something to look at. But minimizing high spikes in vital metrics. We need to keep that shit down. Heart rate number 1, respiratory rate number 2. Those things go very, very closely together. Incorporating mindful breathing is the one way that we can try to buffer this heart rate spike. As soon as we lose the ability to breathe mindfully, that thing is going to go straight up. I promise you that. So my recommendations for this phase of the recovery performance system is to, again, simplify the process. If you got one corrective drill you like, you know it works, throw it in, do it reciprocally, and don't try to be somebody you're not. You know, if I try to be Mike Fitch from Animal Flow, like, dude's sexy, he's got tattoos, he's all lean, he looks like a model coming on the London fashion stage. Like, if I try to be him, I'm screwed. My heart rate's at 201, and I am needing a nap after my recovery session. That's not how we want this to look. We want our recovery sessions to make us feel better going out than we did coming in. If we're adding to more and more cumulative fatigue on the system, then again, why are you doing what you're doing? You need to answer those questions. Now, this next slide, neural recharge training. This isn't its own step in the performance recovery system. this is an extra little add-on step. First time I ever experienced this type of modality, I was 13 years old. I was a really good baseball player, so at 13, I got shipped down for a summer to play at the IMG Academies for baseball. So it's down in Florida. And at the time, they had this performance sector. It was this monstrous gym, biggest, baddest gym I've ever been in at 13 years old. It was called the IPI, Institute of Performance, or the Performance Institute. So at the time, they had strength coaches working there that we now know their names, but they started off there. Guys like Dr. Brandon Marcello, if you guys know that name. Mark Vestigian, you guys know that name for sure. Those were the coaches that were working there with 13-year-old kids, which I always think is really, really funny, like going back and looking at my life experiences. 13-year-old kids, we weren't doing much training. We're doing a lot of baseball hitting. We're throwing. We're doing some running drills. But you know what? We did a little bit of strength and conditioning work. We were doing 2 to 3 days a week, but it was more skill-based work. But we had a test. We were running 60s. So 60 in baseball is like the time that you look at, the 60-yard dash. So 60 was the biggest time. It was the time that really made you fast or made you slow. The day before we had 60s, our coaches had us doing this weird shit. You know, we did this warm-up. We did some pillar prep. I didn't know. I was 13 years old. All right, John, what you're going to do here is you're going to just catch yourself. Okay, cool. Walk back up. 30 seconds would go by. Okay? Just over and over again, thinking this shit was so stupid. I remember thinking as a 13-year-old kid, like, this guy who's coaching me, Brandon, doesn't know fucking shit. I'm 13. This guy has got a PhD, but he doesn't know shit right now. The next day, I ran the fastest 60 in my life. What did we do there? It was a couple depth jumps. We did a couple single-arm cleans with dumbbells. What we were doing was potentiating the nervous system. We were fooling the nervous system into overperforming. You know, Chris talked a lot about this yesterday. A couple years after this, Chris has the ultimate resource on T-Nation, I think from 2003 or 2004, called it Neural Charge Training. I said you should rebrand it, man, because it's like recharging your batteries. It should be a recharge. That's the way I look at it. It's like you're recharging the fucking battery on your cell phone. That's what this recovery system's all about. You're on red, you want to go to 4-bar green. That's the goal there. This is so powerful. This is such a powerful modality that it has to be respected. Because since that 13-year-old kid thought it was shit, all the way up until today, we've tried to implement more and more of these neural strategies into my training and my performance systems over the last 10 years than ever before, because we see them as being such a high-yielding factor in our training. But I've fucked up a lot of stuff. A lot of athletes. Every single coach. Every coach is trying to push the limits, man. Every single one. We've done some bad stuff. It's not like we're sitting there hurting people, blowing people's discs out of their back every session. But I've fried some people. I've underprepared people for competition. We've had powerlifters bomb out. But this system has been fine-tuned, and these are my preferences on how we now teach this method based on, again, just looking at the risk to reward of the neural recharge. Explosive neurologically driven movements are what we prefer here. When I say Olympic lifts, I don't necessarily mean that they have to be with the barbell. Preferred tool here, dumbbells. Kettlebells work if you're willing to throw those things on the ground after and not go through an eccentric moment. Any sort of dynamic efforts, we use them with the barbell a ton. Plyometrics, any form. Med balls work extremely well here. But the number one thing that I have to recommend for you guys is don't go too deep on this, because you're going to see responses in people's post-activation potentiation for up to 36 hours after some of these techniques that you want to think like you've been touched by the hand of God. Like some athlete just overperformed, shattered their expectations of what was physically possible. And you're like, holy shit, I am neural recharging everyone every day for the rest of my career. I've been there. When you know something works or you've seen something work, it's like you want to test more of that shit. You want to give it to more people. We're in a service-based profession. We're here to serve our athletes and our clients. So when we think something works, I want to give it to everybody. I want to talk about it to everybody. I want to get it out to as many people as possible so they can have the same experience I had with my athlete. Well, I learned this lesson the hard way. We need to keep the duration of these training sessions well under 20 minutes. I say 20 minutes. Essentially, we're thinking about a sweet spot of about 8 to 12 minutes here in this phase alone. Total reps need to be between 25 and 50. That's on the high end. 25 is like where we usually sit with people. Again, it's usually about a rep a minute. Full recoverability between bouts to avoid metabolic fatigue. Lactic acid sucks for recovery, but more than lactic acid, it's the hydrogen ion accumulation in the tissues that really fucks the nervous system. Really fucks the tissues as well. So what this turns into, if I were to play this out, it's like, all right, we're in this next phase of recharge. We're going to do this overhead rotational med ball slam. Okay. And then the guy's like, all right, give me another rep. No, we're only doing singles. What do I do now? No, you got to wait another 45 seconds. What do I do now? No, another 30 seconds. Oh, fuck this. I'm just doing another one. I'm doing another one. I'm doing another one. I'm in CrossFit now. I'm literally having a heart rate over 200. I'm going to puke in that bucket. And that is a recovery workout. We've all seen it before. I've been that guy. Oh, I'm going to walk on the treadmill today for my recovery. Oh, fuck this. I'm going to start jogging. By the time I'm doing sprints, I'm doing 15-15 intervals on the woodway. I've been that guy. Our athletes are most likely that guy too.
I was going to ask from a psychology perspective how you get your athletes to slow down.
You hold a clock in front of their face and go, or put a heart rate monitor on them and say, see? Now go. That's the best way that we've used. There's no arguing a heart rate monitor up on the wall. You're in red, motherfucker. I need you in green right now. Breathe deep. I mean, it's a buy-in factor. This is the reason that we don't have a monstrous amount of success with this. Because most people, especially if you're coaching them remotely, most people are just going to go the more is better mentality. You know, they heard that shit for the last 30 years in our industry. Our society has been telling them that. More is not better. A little bit goes a long way here. It goes so long. Systemic neurological restoration and recovery. You know, Chris, he runs a great neurological profiling course on the entire, everything there is to do about the neural system. But essentially what we're doing here is trying to play that system. We're trying to get into spark recoverability. We're trying to get neurotransmitter balance back into grade. We can increase anabolic hormone production. We can do a lot of cool things systemically. We can improve neuromuscular function and coordination. But we got to be chill with it. We got to be low level with it. And we have to have an extremely high effort-based work focus. Meaning that you only have X amount of reps. Every single rep counts. Because this is how it usually goes. This is what I see with my athletes. First rep. Spike the heart rate just enough. Oh, that was a shitty rep. Do another one. I'm not going to wait the 60 seconds because that was a shitty rep. That was a little bit better. That heart rate's jumping. Do it again. Takes them 4 reps to get a good one. They're at 170 at the heart rate. They're out of their recoverability zone. Screws the entire thing. So every single movement has to be done violently. It has to be violent explosiveness. That is the highest quality of work that we possibly can execute. That needs to be the focus from the first rep to the last rep. It should be with anything that you do. If you're in bullshitting anything, you're bullshitting your squats, you're bullshitting your foam rolling, bullshitting your recovery, do you really think that you're going to get a good result? You're going to go on T Nation for the next mega program. You're going to go seeking another coach because your coach sucks. It's all about execution. It's all about the real time and maximizing your effort and your mental intensity no matter what you're doing. If you're serious about this, that's the kind of mentality that you have to have. Every single second counts. Every rep counts. So the concentric-only training technique, the COT, this is how we really stay away from increasing the heart rate significantly using some of these explosive bouts. I should mention, too, that we use singles. We use singles. We do not use doubles, triples, 10, 60 seconds straight. We use single explosive reps. The reason being is that we can mitigate the risk of increasing that heart rate. One single explosively, it should bump it, but it doesn't go crazy. We want to eliminate 2 of the 3 muscular phases of action here. The most stressful in terms of increasing the heart rate and vital metrics, and really just trying to avoid frying the CNS. The amorphization, the change of direction phase, and that eccentric lengthening phase. These are the ones where we kind of get that blood pressure rolling. Anyone who's done a super maximal eccentric, that shit gets your heart rate jacked. There's no doubt about it, as opposed to something quick. It's a lot of neural fatigue, exactly. So we're trying to spike the neuromuscular response instead of fatigue the response. So we're trying to maximize training volumes here because with the concentric-only technique, we can really increase the amount of total volume that we can go through, not only in our training sessions, but in our performance recovery sessions. We can increase frequencies here, intensities, mental intensities. We are not going to be accumulating neural or mechanical fatigue here when we program this properly. Again, the goal is to spark recovery with this method. And we're using these different movements to try to tap into this and this. This is the hardest things that our coaches have trouble conceptualizing. I might be doing a dumbbell snatch like that, throwing the dumbbell away, walking around for 60 seconds. It's not like, oh man, I'm really working on my triple extension moment here, like my overhead shoulder stability. It's really on point today. I don't give a shit. I'm training this and this. This is just a means to get to it. It's just like the foam roller. I'm not breaking up scar tissue on my arm. What I'm doing is putting an input into the system so it can go back to here. This is just an entry point into the body. These exercises are an entry point into our neuromuscular systems. Differentiate those mentally, very, very helpful. Proven COT modalities that we use all the time. We do use cleans. We do snatches with barbells with somebody that can clean and can snatch. Don't do it with somebody that doesn't have an Olympic lifting background. So 97% of everyone else is doing plyometrics, sleds, carries. These things are extremely, extremely effective. But again, we need to be monitoring people's energy systems as we go. Walking's one of these things that gets no credit. I'm so glad Professor McGill is continuing to talk about walking, because honestly, the highest yielding physical activity in terms of overall health and wellness that we've ever studied, hands down. You want to be healthy, orthopedically, systemically, you better be walking. Walking's another one of these physical practices that we've just lost. We've lost our ability to walk. I was in Slovenia a couple of weeks ago, and I was teaching at this sport university, and it was literally on the side of a fucking mountain in the middle of nowhere. So I get out of the airport, and they drive me into the middle of nowhere, 45 minutes, and I get to this little town, and they have the houses. I didn't even have a hotel. It was like an Airbnb. And I get out, and I'm like, holy shit. I'm in the middle of nowhere. My cell phone's not working. My computer's not hooking up. I'm like, it was medieval ages over there. So I get there, and I'm like, man, I'm hungry. I need to get some food. It took me a mile and a half to walk to the next grocery store. There was no 7-Eleven. Walgreens wasn't one corner away. There's nothing. But you know what? I got on my journey. I'm walking. Everyone's looking at me because obviously I'm American. They want to know about Trump. So people are trying to ask me a little bit. I'm walking. You know what? There's 5 other people walking that same path. And they got one meal of food at this little tiny grocery store, and they walked it back. Walking was just more of their society. I mean, it was just part of their daily practice. You know, somebody with a loaf of bread, super Europe. It's just not part of our daily practices anymore, especially in our suburban lifestyles, in our rural lifestyles. You know, we have a lot of population in those areas. Not everyone's a city dweller, and even the ones that are doing a lot of driving, and they're not having to use the locomotive abilities that our body has been designed to do. But again, this low impact, low intensity, steady state cardio, it sets the stage for athletes being healthy human beings first. One of the tenets that I try to teach with all my high performance athletes, whether you're NFL All-Pro, whether you're a Major League Baseball player, whether you're Dave Tate, whether you're competing on the platform still, you gotta be a human first. You gotta be a human being, you gotta be able to do shit that humans are supposed to do. You gotta be able to be your species first in terms of movement and health. Then we lay that foundation so we can scale up your practices more sustainably in terms of your goal attainment and your sport and your physical focuses. Gotta be a human first. We all forget about that. It's like, man, I wanna squat 1,000. Okay. Well, you can't walk, can't do shit. I understand at the highest levels there's some sacrifices that need to be made. But many people that we see that have a great amount of resilience through sport in any type of endeavor, they had very, very sound physical practices in their upbringing. Everybody wants to talk about LeBron James on a fucking Bosu ball with the dynamic sticks doing like side crunches on Instagram. It got 10 million hits or something. Oh, should my 13-year-old basketball player do that? No. Your 13-year-old basketball player should be playing football like LeBron did. He should be in strength conditioning like LeBron was 3 days a week from freshman year of high school all the way up into senior year. And then maybe 14 years from then he can do the Bosu ball. What are those foundational practices and movement skills that somebody develops? That's what we need to be looking at here. But walking is one of those skills. One of my biggest pet peeves, I won't say every physical therapist, but a lot of shitty physical therapists out there, just running the mill right now. They'll get in a runner. Hey, what's your chief complaint? Like taking notes on their computer so they can get paid. Reimbursements suck. Oh, it hurts when I run. Okay, cool. Then they start doing all this passive crap. They MMT everything. They go out and give them a corrective exercise or two. Some student works with them maybe for 20 minutes, and then they go home. They do 30 rounds of that. They never get better. What didn't that physical therapist do? If it hurts when you run, let's watch you run. So what that means for walking, if you're going to have your clients walk, so unless they're literally non-ambulatory, you need to be assessing that as a movement skill. A lot of the coaches I heard from yesterday, especially in the panels, that assessment starts the second somebody walks through that door. For me with the athletes, as soon as they start walking, that is data that I can yield. We were talking about, I think it was in the rehab panel yesterday, they were talking about looking at assessing static posturing. Before I do that, I want to see their dynamic posturing. I want to see their ambulatory abilities, their reciprocating fashion of their arms and their legs over a pillar complex. That's the kind of stuff that I want to see before we ever look at them like this. Because you know what? The body thrives with movement. We need to assess it and screen it with movement, and then we need to reverse engineer from that point. But if you're not having your people walk, this is just negligent. Walking with my athletes on my programs today and for the last better part of a decade have been non-negotiable in terms of programming. Low impact activity, low intensity activity, yes, you could put anything in here. I prefer things that, again, can train multiple aspects of the human body and physiology at once. Stu's got the research on this, man. If you want to keep your lower back healthy, walk. If you want to keep your BMI down, walk. If you want to just feel better, walk. If you want to have better mental acuity, walk. Like, how much more do we need right now? Bare minimum, 10 minutes a day is what we do, but we also train it in a way that we go up to maybe 45 to 60 minutes if, again, we are at the right interval on our heart rate. We need to keep this usually under 120 beats per minute. That's my general recommendation here. But we usually monitor this very specifically to somebody's trainability that day. I use HRV monitoring with our athletes. It gives a custom heart rate interval for each and every day based off of, again, a morning monitor. This does more than just keep us healthy. It makes us human again. If you want to be a great athlete, you better be a good human first. You better move like somebody is designed to move. Builds a cardiovascular base. There's advantages for reciprocal patterning. If somebody doesn't have the ability to walk 10 minutes a day, giving an example of Dave. You all know Dave. When I started with him last December, he was in a bad spot. You guys have watched the series. He was in a bad spot. He was in a bad spot to the point where he went down his driveway to get the mail. Before he got to his mailbox, breathing, heart rate crazy, couldn't even make it down to his fucking mailbox. I think that was a tipping point. That was a tipping point for Dave to get on the phone with me. Walking was his tipping point. Cardiovascular base was his tipping point. He thought he could scale up strength again on his own. He thought he could maybe get bigger and stronger on his own. But you know what? When you can't walk down your driveway, that's something as a human being that scares you. Even somebody like Dave, one of the strongest men I know, that scares you. That scares you to the point where you're going to get your life taken away from you. So you know what? We had a 5-hour conversation on the phone. I think it was on Christmas Eve. I was down in Florida with my family. 3 days later, I was in Columbus, and we were building a structure to get him back. We didn't do anything fancy with the energy systems work. We didn't do anything fancy. You know what Dave did? He walked 3 days a week, 10 minutes a day to start. 10 minutes a day was grueling. And we didn't have him do it outside because I didn't trust that he could get back from where he was walking from. It sounds funny, but it's really not. I did not trust that he wouldn't be passed out in some fucking ditch somewhere. I wanted him on a treadmill for a reason, so we could monitor that stuff. And you know what? He started out at 4 minutes his first week. He started out at 7 minutes his next week. We built it up. In 8 months, I didn't do therapy on him. I didn't adjust his neck. I didn't dry needle his ass. I didn't do any of this stuff. What we did was use training as our method of modality. Training was my means of fixing. Fixing. There's no real fixing. You guys know that. But 8 months later, after 4 different phases and 3 microphases that we had him go through, not trying to peak the dude, just trying to get the dude so he wasn't in pain anymore, just to get the guy moving again, interacting with his family, be able to get up in the morning and get out of bed instead of laying there for 2 hours. With that being the goal, Dave put 925 on his back with light reverse bands, squatted it to a box that was 4 inches lower than he's been squatting to the last 6 years. Did that on a Friday. That was cool. He sent me that video. Cool, man. I don't really give a shit what you squat because it's about your lifestyle right now. We've proven that. Unless you're going to go compete with the SS yoke bar, don't give a shit. But the next day, I got a video, and it was literally one of the life-changing things. It was him finishing, this sounds so stupid, but it was so meaningful at the time. His goal in December, that 5-hour conversation, said, I want to walk this race with my son. I want to do this zoo walk in Columbus Zoo. It's a 5K. I can't make it to the mailbox right now. So anyone who knows Dave's son, Blaine, awesome kid, right? Personality out the roof. Blaine doesn't ask for much, man. He just wants to walk this fucking race with his dad. And he wants to do something that he wants to train for. Dave squatted 925 on Friday at the compound with all his buds. Saturday morning, he woke up, subjective pain scale of 1.5 out of 10. He was at 6.5 daily going into this training session, these training blocks. 1.5 out of 10, rolled up in the morning, 8 a.m. race, 8 a.m., usually can't even get out of bed until 10, 8 a.m. race. He walks that zoo walk, sweaty as shit. I think he had a t-shirt that said, Team Fat Dad. But he videoed the last piece of that race, and his son high-fiving him. And the funniest part about it was Blaine goes, "I beat this fucking old man's ass." And he points to his dad, and he's looking right at his dad when he did it on video. And I got that text at literally I think it was 9:30 in the morning. And I sat down, and that was one of the more rewarding things I've ever seen. It was one of the more rewarding things I've ever done in my entire career. Not because it was on Elite FTS, not just because it was on a documentary. Nobody knew about that shit except for me, Dave, his family, the people that were doing his training with him at the compound. That's being a human. That's being able to do human things. This played a huge role in it. This entire system played a huge role in it. And again, it's not the sexiest things. Sustainable practices, lifestyle habits, reworking and reverse engineering a faulty process. Walking a 5K, it sounds stupid. Hey, I just peaked my guy for a 5K. Nice, man. You're an awesome coach. But the cases that I get, shit's hitting the fan on people. It's not a good day if you're calling me up and hey, man, we need to do some consulting, we need to train, you need to write me some blogs, you need to come in and coach me. It's not a good day. Shit was going well for everybody. They wouldn't be using me, they wouldn't be using you guys. Just goes to show that people are coming to you with challenges. Our goal as professionals is to be a real-time problem solver, to get deep on somebody and solve their problems with them. That's our profession. That's serving our clients. But when we think about this low-intensity, steady-state cardio, the walking practices, I thought it was dumb when I was an athlete. I thought it was dumb. I went on a walking program when I was at University of Buffalo in my rehab program, and I thought it was the stupidest shit I've ever heard. I'm a high-performance athlete. I'm a Division I baseball player right now. You're going to have me on a walking program? I can run a 6.5 60. Why am I walking right now? So this is one of these buy-ins that it's a hard conversation to have, especially with your athletes, but the physical results speak for themselves. I always get the question, like you asked, how do you get the buy-in? How do you get the buy-in for some of this fluffy shit? It is fluffy shit. You know what? Results speak. Results speak. People are looking for a reason to buy into you. They're there for a reason. If they're there for the right reason and you're a dynamic enough of a coach to make a connection with your athletes, to get them to believe in you, it doesn't matter what the modality is, as long as you produce them a result. It's a relationship. You need to be highly invested in your people. They need to believe in you.
When do you have them walk?
I'll go over that in a second. That'll be the last couple slides. So the last portion of this performance recovery system, it's one of the first and most simple things that we should be looking at with our people. Breathing. We got to do it. It's mandatory for life. Parasympathetic positional breathing, this has been highly, highly effective. And this is nothing original to me. I did not create this method. I use it a little bit differently than I first was introduced to it. But this alone, if you were to do nothing other than this for your recovery after your sessions, this will pay off dividends instantly. This will instantly help you. There are not many things in this world that have instant payoff, instant gratification. This is one of them. First time I encountered parasympathetic positional breathing, I was at University of Buffalo. I was finishing up my exercise science degree up there. I was no longer playing baseball. I was rehabbing in the weight room. It was just a terrible time. I went from being a awesome outfielder at University of Rhode Island, being injured, being not playing, going back to UB, figuring out if I want a red shirt or go play again, what the hell's going on. I go back into the weight room. And at the time, they had this strength coach. I won't say who it is yet. This guy's a big meathead. Kind of looked like JL. He had a beard. He had a bald head. He talked like JL too. He was a head football strength coach. Head football strength coach, I would go in, I'd do my own rehab, my training, then I'd always volunteer time at that university. More people have helped me there than really anywhere else to get me started. And I see this dude He's got these beasts. He's got his offensive linemen. They finished the squat session. They finished the finisher. All right, boys, everybody on the ground. What? All right, everybody lay down and get a bench. Like, what is going on right now? Everyone's laying down on their backs, their legs elevated, and these 300-pounders are sitting there like, I'm like, holy shit. What is this coach doing right now? I couldn't believe that he was having these guys. You know, some of them were bitching and moaning like, oh, coach, I don't have to go and lay down on the ground. I'm fine. I need to go back to class. No, going down on the ground. That breathing was something that I was like, man, this is crazy. But I saw the guys stand up from that, and I was watching this week after week after week, having nothing else to do. At the time, I was only taking like 8 to 10 credits because I only needed that to move on. And I was working on a doctoral research study with a PhD candidate doing throwing biomechanics and also spending a shit ton of time in this weight room. But I get to it, I'm like, man, these guys are standing up. They're feeling good. This guy just had 500 on his back and he hit it for a triple and he's feeling good. He's walking out like with swag. Holy shit. They just got killed the hour before and they're walking out feeling good. That changed my perception of what recovery meant that day. Does anyone know who that coach is? Who? You know it. So, Buddy, maybe the best strength coach living. Unbelievable. With the Cardinals. Unbelievable coach. He was doing this shit way before. He was the first guy I've seen do this. If somebody else did it before him, I apologize, but my credit, paying credit where credit is due, is to Buddy on this thing, because since seeing that and since implementing it more regularly now, this is another one of these things that I honestly don't think that anyone should leave a training session or the weight room before they do this. Getting down into a supported position, on the back, hands down on the ground, palms facing up. We maximize surface area contact on a supported position. When we think about apprehension levels, the most highly apprehensive position that the body could possibly be in is this: true single leg stance. We have minimal surface area contact of the foot on a stable surface. This is the polar opposite of that. Full spine supported, full arm supported. We have our palms up so we don't have crazy stimulus going into these sensory deep organs on our hands and our feet and our face. We have our hips and our knees positioned at 90 degrees in order to, again, centrate those hips, keep our spine and pelvis in sound positions, and be able to have some of that edema come back down and formulate the blood flow that just came from the workout to formulate right around where we want it to, the lumbar spine, lumbopelvic complex, and all of the viscera. Blood flow here is good. It's really, really good for regeneration. This positions us to not only get that blood flow there, but to place our bodies in a position where we can literally bring the heart rate down as quickly as I could ever see in any other method that I've used. We have athletes spiking heart rates at about 200 in their finishers and getting their heart rates down into the 40s in a matter of 2 minutes. 240. When we're talking about always fighting that sympathetic urge, that chronic sympathetic state, the chronic redlining of our systems, that's what leads to chronic cumulative fatigue. That's redlining. That means that you waved up in your training program, you peaked on your performance lift, you hit some accessories and shit, and then you stayed up here the entire time. You stayed up here at home. You stayed up here and sleeping. You stayed up there the next day. You fried yourself. This breathing strategy, this entire system, allows us to bring that down before we walk our sweaty asses out of the gym for the day. Environment matters here. Environment matters. So the biggest challenges that my coaches have that use this is getting their athletes into a quiet, controlled environment. I was running a session last month in Seattle, Washington, and I had a group of 4 athletes training with me, and we were doing this breathing strategy, and you would know it. DMX comes on. It's like, it's gonna give it to you. He's like screaming through the speakers, and they're trying to breathe. I'm like, it was so funny because there's no more sympathetic music than DMX. Like, don't listen to DMX when you're doing this breathing strategy. Don't do it. Don't even try. What you need to be doing, if you're in the situation where you have X hitting you, put some earbuds in, put some Jack Johnson on, chill a little bit. Let somebody listen to some like low-level techno, like get their eyes closed, sensory deprived, something in their ears so they can relax. If I'm listening to the Rough Riders anthem, my heart rate's going to be at like 210. I need to get down. I need to get it down. So environment matters here, guys. It's not only about the position. Position soundly, that's important, but get the environment right. How many of you strength coaches, it's like, you're the DJ that knows how to get your athletes jacked up at the right times? Environment matters, man. When I used to work with Athletes Performance, when they used to actually be Athletes Performance, we had this coach, and he was DJing off of his cell phone the entire time, and he took great pride in being like, hey, we're about to get into the squats. He's like, da, and everyone goes, like they jump up. One of the first jobs I ever had, a guy named Todd Durkin hired me in Southern California. He used to have the fucking Rocky anthem playing all hours of the day. It was like the Rocky theme song. And it was playing all day. You know, running the double shifts, being there at 4 in the morning, being there at 10 at night, hearing Rocky all day. You know what? I didn't feel jacked up. My clients did. But it's not about you as a coach. It's about your clients. Use some tempo-based breathing once you get into these positions. There's many different breathing strategies that you can get into here. There's many great resources. One of the best resources that I've personally used is the tactical box breathing. It's popularized by Coach Mark Devine. Mark is the owner of Seal Fit out in Southern California. When I was there, I got to manage a lot of his clients going through some serious training. And the box breathing is the one that we try to really focus in on. It's as simple as 4 seconds in, 4-second hold at the top, 4 seconds out, 4-second hold at the bottom. That seems really simple, but if you guys try to do it right now, that's some challenging stuff. It makes you be mindful of that process. You know, recovery breathing, corrective breathing, all these different strategies. The good thing about all these slides right now is I have about 1,000 published articles out there for free. So if you want to Google any of these things, I probably have a 5,000-word article with multiple videos on it. So make sure that you're using those resources. Quality of breathing matters. You know, chest versus belly breathing. We want to have more of an excursion through the belly to start off with, but there's nothing wrong with finishing off a breath with some rib springing. There's nothing bad about getting some air up into here as well. In terms of maximizing tidal volumes, that's what we have to do. Symmetry and smoothness, the agility of the breathing skill. I view breathing as something like, yeah, no shit, you have to do it to stay alive, but it's also a movement skill. We can manipulate our breathing positions. We can manipulate the way in which we breathe. This could be a corrective exercise strategy for somebody. And I don't just say that saying it. I say it because it's worked with our athletes. Again, we can monitor vital metrics here. This is how we know it's working. We want to take heart rates, and after this entire session, we want to go, holy shit, you have a recovery zone heart rate, if not lower. Where are we going to program this? Getting back to your question here. Programming recovery workouts can have one of 3 places, if not all of these places. The post-workout window. So this would look like you just ended max effort leg day. You had a max effort squat attempt on your back. You got through your accessory work. You hit your finisher. And boom, this entire phasic system starts then. Not everybody who's training athletes and training general fitness clients have an additional 15 to 45 minutes on top of their sessions. I totally get that. Time investment. For the high performance athletes or the people that this is their friggin' job, I like to put it on the post-workout window. We go through the soft tissue. We go through the stretching. We go through a little bit of flow. We go through a little bit of walking, and we get their asses breathing. That happens from 15 to 45 minutes. That's not in the cards for everybody. It's simply not. Not everybody's going to be a Drew Brees that comes in at 9 a.m. every single morning of the offseason and leaves at 5 p.m. like he's working a desk job. Not everybody's going to be like that. So for our athletes, for our clients, For people that have other shit to do, we have secondary recovery workouts that happen 4 to 6 hours after the main training session of the day. And we have a mandatory off-day programming. In my programs, we do not have off days. If you have goals, we need to be doing something active, something mindful every single day that's going to help us. Off-day programming turns into this exact system. If you're using this on your off days, you can really build out the low-intensity, steady-state energy systems work anywhere from up to 30 to 45 minutes at a time based on your capacities. There's many ways to quantify recoverability. The best thing that I could recommend for you guys is to look at heart rate, make it simple. We don't have to make it too complex because remember, we want to be teaching people these skills so they can use it on their own. Unless you're one hell of a coach that trains somebody 7 days a week in person, people are going to be doing shit on their own. They got to transfer these skills. Make it minimum effective dosages in the information that they're getting. Heart rate's one of those things. It's simple, boom, boom, or having a monitor, and it's something that we can scale. How many people in this room have gone through my functional hypertrophy training program, FHT? Okay, so we got a couple. So 3 years is coming up on the 3-year anniversary of FHT. FHT was my 10 years all into one program, and it's something that has helped a lot of people. It's sold a lot of programs over the years, and a lot of people have been asking for more. They've been asking for another program for now 2.5 years, but I wasn't ready to do anything yet. But over these experiences that I've had, not only with Dave, a couple other of our power lifters, but the experiences in my own evolution of training and systemization, I've been beta testing a program for 24 months. 24 months of beta testing. My beta testing starts with myself. We start with a group of 5 athletes. We scale it up to a group of 10, and then we scale it up to a beta test group of about 80 athletes. All of this betaing has turned into something that finally we're going to be releasing a brand new program that's going to hopefully change the way that people look at strength, look at power in the fitness industry, in the sports performance industry. So in 2019, you guys are going to see functional power training as the next program that's going to be released. And the goal of this program is to get people into positions where they can get strong. We can develop strength and power. And you know what? We can say strength, lifting, and high performance is not inherently dangerous. Putting a 1 RM on your back when it's well earned is not dangerous. A 1 may be safer than a 5. We are going to be training max effort in a more intelligent way. We're going to be training dynamic effort. We're going to be building out foundational movement patterns. We're going to be going through some of my new ratios of where we want to place the training volume to keep people resilient and healthy against injuries. So I couldn't be more excited to be here at SWIS. Couldn't be more excited to have functional power training releasing. I appreciate each and every one of you guys staying on a Sunday to hear me speak, and really appreciate all the support. Thank you, guys.
On behalf of Ken and SWIS.
Thanks, brother.